Okay. Great. Once again, welcome to the Energy Star Certification and Benchmarking webinar for U.S. and Canadian distilleries. We're pleased to have an expert panel here to talk about this opportunity that we now have available to us here in the United States and Canada. This is being recorded, so please take note of that. And we at the Distilled Spirits Council are very excited about this opportunity here to learn about the Energy Star certification that is now being launched and the new Energy Performance Indicator, which was developed in collaboration with EPA, Duke University, several DISCUS members, and other distilleries participating in EPA's Energy Star program. Please note that the distilled spirits sector is the first in the beverage alcohol industry to have its own Energy Performance Indicator, or EPI, and have the ability to apply for Energy Star certification. So this is very exciting. We applaud the EPA and our member companies and others who work together to create this important new tool, and for leading the way in helping other distilleries measure and reduce their energy usage. So with that, let's kick it off, and let me provide a brief intro of all of our speakers. Kim, next slide. So I'm Christine Lukasha, the DISCUS Chief of Policy, Strategy, and Membership. We'll also hear from Danny Macri, who is the Energy Star for Industry Certification Manager here in Washington, D.C. with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, as well as Matt Doolin, who is the Energy Star EPI developer and with Duke University. And then finally, we'll hear from Muneem Hussain, who is the Corporate Director of Environmental Sustainability with MGP Ingredients, a DISCUS member, who also is the Vice Chair of the DISCUS Sustainability Committee. Next slide. So with that, let me turn it over to Danny Macri with EPA. Over to you, Danny.
Thank you so much, Christine, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm Danny Macri, and I'm with the Energy Star program at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Next slide. First, I just want to thank Christine and DISCUS for hosting this webinar. DISCUS is partnering with the U.S. EPA to help support increased energy efficiency and sustainability in distilleries across the U.S. And because of that, DISCUS has received U.S. EPA's Energy Star Partner of the Year earlier this year. So that's a really big achievement, and thank you again, DISCUS, for all you're doing. Now, Energy Star, it's a voluntary program that's managed by the U.S. EPA. It started in 1992, and over the last 30 years, the program has been touching all aspects of the U.S. economy, from residential homes to products to building and manufacturing plants. Next slide. Energy Star, it's also considered the national symbol of energy efficiency. This graph shows the results of a Good Housekeeping survey from a few years ago, and it shows the amount of influence different eco-labels have on consumers. And all the way on the left side of the graph, you'll see that Energy Star is the eco-label with over 90% public trust and recognition. And what I find interesting in this graph is that there's more trust and recognition than the EPA logo, and EPA manages the Energy Star program. So if you're on this call, you're probably doing something to manage your energy or focus on sustainability. Affiliating yourself with a brand that has such high levels of recognition can only help you communicate your story. Next slide. And one more, I'm going to tell you about the Energy Star program. Now, many of you are probably familiar with this logo. You may actually have some in your office or in your home right now. So Energy Star certifies consumer products that are the most energy efficient in the country. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that we also certify the manufacturing plants that are the most energy efficient in the country for meeting strict US EPA criteria for energy efficiency. And the way that a plant determines if it's in the top quartile of energy efficiency is through the 1 to 100 Energy Star score. The next slide shows that this is a program by the EPA. We have 1 to 100 Energy Star scores for a number of manufacturing sectors. And last month, we launched the 1 to 100 score for distilleries. Next slide. The 1 to 100 score, our benchmarking tools, it helps you understand your level of energy efficiency compared to distilleries with similar characteristics around the US and in Canada. So for example, if you have a score of a 50, doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that your facility, it has an average performance of energy efficiency. If it's below 50, it means that you're below average. And if you're above 50, it means that you're more energy efficient than half the distilleries in the US. Next slide. Now, if you have a score of 75 or higher, it means that you are in the top 25% of energy efficiency, and it means that your distillery is eligible for Energy Star certification. Next slide. So the score, it's used for Energy Star certification, but it's also used for benchmarking the performance of your distillery. Even if you aren't eligible for certification, there's a lot of value for using this tool. So getting your score, it shows you how you compare to the competition. This model is based on actual data. So again, if you get a score of 50, it means that 50% of the industry is more energy efficient than you. And it means that you are probably wasting money on energy that could be saved through energy efficiency measures. Also, you may be doing a lot around sustainability and energy efficiency. And you may think, you know what, we're a leader, there's nothing else we could be doing. But when you get your score, and if it's not 100, it means that there's probably still some more that you can be doing to be a leader. And then finally, it helps you set goals. You know, one year you may have a score of a 60, which is good. You're better than average. But maybe over the coming years, you want to try to get Energy Star certification. So you want to move up to a 75 or higher. So I'm going to hand this over now to Matthew Doolin from Duke University, who helped develop the model to identify the scores. And he'll tell you a little bit more about how the model works. Matt?
Danny, before we do that, looks like we have one question in the Q&A.
Thank you so much for flagging that. Will the presentation slide deck be available after the webinar? Yes, it will be. And I believe DISCUS will be sending that. Is that right, Christine?
Yes, and we are recording this, so that will also be available and posted on our website.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Danny. And if you can just go ahead and move on to the next set of slides. Okay. I'll go ahead and start introducing myself. So I work at Duke University. And I helped develop the different energy performance indicators along with Dr. Gail Boyd, who has been working with Energy Star for a very long time, and I believe is on the call now. And we've been working to create this energy performance indicator specifically for distilled spirits. And I'll go into a little bit of detail about the process of how we got there, what an EPI actually is, what it does, what it doesn't do, and then go over some specific insight into the distilled spirits EPI itself. So next slide. And next slide, I guess. Okay, so first, so what is an EPI? What is an energy performance indicator? What does it do? And so what it does is it defines the best in class for an industry. So like Danny was mentioning, you can use this to determine where you rank on an energy efficiency basis against your competitors within the broad industry. And how we define that is at the sector-specific NAICS codes, so the North American Industrial Classification Codes. And so we define those. We drill down to the 6 to 8 digit level. And the reason we do that is, you know, industry can be very broad, right? So we can't just roll out a tool that can apply to you know, a broader range. We have to get very specific. And in this case, you know, if we stopped at a 4-digit level, then we would be comparing distilleries to breweries to wineries, and that's just, those are two different. So we have to keep going and really create a tool that is tailor-made just for that specific industry. And so we use energy data at the whole facility level. Energy Star, both the industrial side of things and the commercial side of things, uses source energy. And so we track that. That just means we track it back to the power plant, so the energy that's required to make the power that gets to your site. And then we normalize for key variables that are industry specific. So again, we have to be very specific when we're looking at the different different sectors, because what works for, say, cement is not going to work for distilled spirits, and what might work for distilled spirits won't work for commercial bakeries and things like that. So it's a pretty involved process where we work with different companies to really figure out what it is that drives energy within each industry. Next slide. And so a little bit more, an EPI is a plant level measure of system of energy performance. It's not a process level benchmark. So we're not, looking at just the still or just the, just the actual creation of the liquors, or spirits, but we're taking a broader look at the entire plant. It's a statistical model based on actual data from the industry. It's not an engineering analysis or looking at hypothetical, best in practice. And so the data that is used to create these performance indicators is setting realistic goals that based on actual data, what are actual plants achieving. And then it's a tool that facilitates an apples to apples comparison. And so it's trying to put plants on the same, even the playing field, right? So a small plant can be compared to a big plant. A plant that makes rum can be compared to a plant that makes whiskey. And so it really answers the question, if all plants in this specific industry made the same products as mine, had the same, configuration, the same size, what percentage of plants in the country would use less energy and what percent would use more? And so that's where the score that Danny mentioned comes into play. So if you're getting a 75, what that really means is you're better than 75% of other plants in the industry. Now for the next slide. Thank you. And so this is a screenshot from the distilled spirits energy performance indicator. And just kind of more broadly, each EPI is kind of broken down into 3 parts, where you enter in your plant characteristics. And again, those vary depending on the industry that we're working with. You enter in energy, and that includes all fuels, all electricity. And we have a lot of different types there. And then the EPI spits out your model results there at the bottom. And so that's where you can see get your actual score, your energy intensity, and then it tells you what an average plant or an efficient plant with your same identical characteristics, what they would be scoring, or what energy intensity they would have, how much energy they would be expected to use. And there are examples of EPIs from other sectors on the Energy Star website. The link is down there at the bottom. So if you're curious to look at what goes into a fertilizer performance indicator, you're more than welcome to check that out. And next slide. And so how the EPI models energy. So it takes the plant characteristics, it takes the energy that you enter, and it creates the model range. So this range is a energy distribution that is based on if every plant in the industry had the exact same characteristics as your plant does. So in this case, we're saying, this plant makes a couple products, weather impacts energy, and plant capacity, so overall size of the site is important. And an efficient plant would be using, 50 MMBTUs. An inefficient, would use 170, and this plant specifically uses 65. And so that range is variable. It changes whenever these characteristics are changed. That model range and distribution differs. And so it places the plant's total energy on that distribution and assigns the score based on where it falls. And so there's, it's statistics behind that that I can discuss further on a separate call or in a deeper conversation, but we're not going to go into that right now. But the distribution, the range of performance is dependent on the plant characteristics and fluctuates depending on what those are. Next slide. And so eligibles, plant types for the distilled spirits EPI, this one should be pretty obvious. You need to be making and processing distilled spirits. And we do a cutoff of 50% of product value comes from spirits. And so that is kind of to make sure that the bulk of the on-site operations comes from distilled spirits. And so combined facilities, for example, maybe a brewery that also has an on-site distillation operations, if they can sub-meter and remove energy from the other production activities, so in this case in the brewery side of things, and just get the distillation activities, then this EPI would also apply. Right now, only plants located in the United States and Canada are eligible for certification, but distilleries from both Europe and Mexico were included in the underlying analysis, and we see no reason that you couldn't use the tool for energy management purposes for sites in those locations. But again, they just wouldn't be eligible for certification, but it would give a good insight into how those plants are performing. And Canadian facilities have a separate, slightly different EPI, which I think Danny will discuss later on. So next slide, please. And so, can you go back one? There we go. And so now I'm just going to do a broad definition for the model variables in the distilled spirits EPI. So it's total distilled production, and this is in proof volume. It's all types of spirits combined together, excluding brandy that are produced on site. Brandy has a slightly different process, which we had to exclude. Redistilled purchased spirits, so that's total spirits that were purchased and transferred from another site and then redistilled. And so that's a big energy difference, whether you're purchasing and redistilling on site or if you're creating it. Byproduct moisture removal, and so that's just the amount of moisture removed from the byproducts, from whatever they may be from the different types of spirits. Heating degree days, so this is a weather variable that can be found using Energy Star's degree days calculator, and then the percentage of the warehouse production spaces that are on site and that are heated. Next slide, please. Right, and so the final EPI model, this is just some completely made up data that I put in here, comparing a big distillery and a still big but slightly smaller distillery. And so what we found is that there are different impacts based on production volume. And so basically what that means is that once you reach a certain level of production, continuing to produce more, it has a nearly one-to-one relationship between production and energy. So as your production goes up, your energy goes up in step with that. And then that's lower for smaller production distilleries, showing that there are some efficiency opportunities that come with scale, with getting larger. We found that moisture removal was approximately 35% of total energy at a site when the byproduct is fully dried, and the model accounts for different percentages and fluctuations depending on the site there. So if you don't fully dry it, you put in your percentage and it's a slightly different energy impact. And this was in line with the data that we received and comments from the different members and focus companies that gave us advice and comments during the period. And then also purchasing and redistilling all of your final production would use about 83% less energy than if you made it all on site. So this model does, can account for sites that are, fully purchasing grain neutral spirits and redistilling it and then sending it out the door. Next slide, please. And so this last one is visualizing distilled spirits efficiency. And there's a lot going on here, but basically what this is trying to show is how the model doesn't just compare everyone on an energy intensity basis. So depending on what your plant characteristics are, you have a different range of performance and a different benchmark to hit. And so I'll just talk about the yellow line real quick. So the yellow line is a plant that has 100% moisture removal and no purchased spirits. And so if you're removing moisture, we'd expect your energy intensity to be higher. And so they're set to a different benchmark. And then as this goes on, you can see that bigger companies, like I mentioned, there's that scale of efficiency. That getting bigger has some advantages. And so they're held to a different benchmark as well. So the model is adjusting based on these different characteristics. Next slide. All right, and last thing, what can the EPI do for you? Well, one is Energy Star certification, which Danny will talk about in just a second. You can also use it to compare two sites or improvement at one site over time. And so we have this red column and blue column. The blue column is, generally used for the main site or the current year. And then the red column is just there for you to play around with. You can put in a previous year and see how it changes. You can put in another site within your company's portfolio and compare the two all in one sheet. Or you could also use it for comparing an existing plant to a hypothetical plant, or say you're going to do a big efficiency improvement project on that site. You can put in some estimated energy numbers and then see how it would change the score, and make sure it's moving in the direction you'd expect. It can help set manageable energy reduction goals and illustrate some potential cost savings. So I just made up some cost numbers here as well. And so you can see that the current plant is getting a score of a 56. And if you look on the far right, if this plant were able to improve to a 75, this is the model can estimate about what the energy cost would be for that site based on what you entered based on current values. And so yeah, I think that basically covers it. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or next slide. Or you can reach out to myself or Gail at those email addresses, and we'd be happy to go over the model with you in more in depth and more detail if you have any additional questions or run into any problems while you're trying to use the tool. And with that, I will pass it back to Danny.
Thanks so much, Matt. There is a question in the chat asking, how much would it cost to get an initial evaluation completed at our distillery to determine our Energy Star level to see if we are eligible for certification? So I'm actually going to go through that now. And to determine your level, there's no cost to that. The model that Matt just showed, it's in Excel, and it's available for download on the Energy Star website. So you could find out your score by just inputting the production information and the energy variables yourself. Next slide. And one more. And one more. Okay. So the first step to determine if you're eligible for certification is to get your Energy Star score. And that is, again, by putting your production and energy data into the Excel spreadsheet that Matt showed. And I'm going to go through these in a little more detail. The second step is something that we do at EPA. We just want to check that there are no egregious pollution violations. The next step is just having somebody validate your data. Then you submit the application. And if everything works out well, you'll get certified. I'll now break this down a little bit more. So starting with the Energy Star score on the next slide. To get a copy of the Distillery Energy Performance Indicator, the benchmarking tool, you go to energystar.gov/EPIS, Energy Performance Indicators, and you would download the Excel spreadsheet for distilleries. You would then get data for a 12-month period, production and energy data, and you'd put that into the spreadsheet, and momentarily Muneem will show you an example for that. And then the next step is that you need to develop a certification file. In the event that the plant is audited, and we will just audit 5% of plants a year just to maintain the integrity of the program. In the event that there is audit, we want to be able to see all of the assumptions that went into compiling that data. Next slide. Step 2, again, even though certification just acknowledges your level of energy efficiency, This is a certification given by the US EPA. So we want to make sure that there are no high priority violations or consent decrees, non-compliance associated with the distillery. That's something that we will do on our end. But just to let you know up front, if you do think there may be an issue, reach out to me and I can tell you before you begin the process whether it would be eligible or not. Usually it's only 5–10% of the cases per year that are not eligible. Next slide. Okay, so you as the energy manager, sustainability manager, you can go into the EPI and put in the data yourself. But we do want a separate set of eyes to make sure that the data that you're entering is valid. And a lot of times it's because having a second set of eyes is just helpful for checking the work. We do require a licensed professional engineer to do this. And Munim, I believe, will talk a little bit about this. And essentially you engage the PE. We do have a check sheet, which is available on our website. They just need to go through that and make sure that everything is checked. So these include things like making sure that units were converted properly, that they looked at the invoices to find energy data, and so on. Next. So the PE checks the data, and then to confirm that he or she checked the data, you would go to the Excel spreadsheet, which Matt showed earlier, and there's a tab in there called the Statement of Energy Performance. It's just going to summarize the main data. You'll print that out, the PE will fix their stamp, and you will scan that. And now you're ready to submit the application. So the next slide shows that to submit an application, almost there. To submit an application, you just need to fill out a letter asking for certification. When we certify your plants, we will send a certificate, we will send a letter. So we just want to make sure that we have all the information correct. So you'll just put in the plant name, the energy manager name, and so on. And then it's ready to be sent to me at EPA. So the next slide just says that once you're ready to apply, you're going to put everything in one email, put the letter in the email, a scanned copy of the Statement of Energy Performance in the email, the Excel file, which has the energy and production data. We just want to make sure that if we put that into a clean API, that we'll get the same score. And if you don't feel comfortable sending that to me, you can send it to Matt at Duke University, and they could give you an NDA. And then the PE checklist. Send it to me by email. It takes me 1 to 2 weeks to respond, and then we will certify the plant. The next slide shows what you get if you receive certification. So the first thing is we'll send the energy manager or the person who submitted the application a letter of congratulations. We will also send a letter to your CEO or senior manager of your choice, congratulating them on this achievement. And we could also reference people at the plant who helped make this possible, who were champions for energy management. We will send the plant a decal, like the one here, that you could put on your distillery that shows that you are a certified facility. You can't put the decal on your products, but you can only put it on the distillery. But still, it's a high level of brand recognition. Your facility, the name will go on the EPA website for getting Energy Star certification, and we'll send you some additional promotional materials. One thing I should note is that in order to maintain certification, in order to continue to use that decal, you do need to reapply for certification every year, only because your energy efficiency can go up or down. If you do it 1 year, the second year should be a piece of cake. Next slide. Now, because we're just launching Energy Star certification for distilleries, EPA may be putting out a press release at the end of the year that's going to list the first set of certified distilleries. Can't say for certainty, but we're working to get that press release issued. If you would like your distillery to be referenced in that press release, I will need to know by, on the next slide, it's September 18th, whether you have a score of 75 or higher. And I'll need to know by by September. I need to receive your application by September 30th to be included. If you don't have time to do that, you could still get certification for 2023 if you submit your application by November 30th. For anyone on this call that has distilleries in Canada, the certification process is fairly similar. You just need to send all that to Natural Resources Canada. The next slide shows that this is just a timeline of key dates to remember. We issued the EPI on August 1st. If you would like to be included in that press release, notify me by September 18th and submit your application by September 30th. And then if you don't have time to submit it by September 30th, you would just need to submit it by the end of November to receive 2023 certification. So you'll receive the slides with all the instructions. They're on the website, but if you do have any questions, you could email me or ask them in the chat. Thank you. All right, I'll turn it back to Christine if you'd like to introduce Muneem.
Thanks, Danny. Well, next up is Muneem Hussain, who will talk about this from a distillery standpoint as a company that is in the process of applying. So Muneem, over to you.
Thank you, Christine. Good afternoon and good morning if someone is in the West Coast. And thanks to EPA Energy Star and Duke University for launching this EPI. This is a good tool, and I'm going to touch on an example how to enter data and how to get a PE involved to get this data verified and stamped. So if you can move to the next slide, Christine. All right. So this, on this slide, I created this very simple table. As you can see, the natural gas usage, electricity usage, production in proof gallons, then byproduct, moisture removal, and the location, and then HDD. These are the inputs that will go into the tab for EPI, Energy Performance Indicator. And as both Danny and Matt indicated, this worksheet can be downloaded from EPA website, and all we need to do is grab those data. This is for a full year data, and this is not a real data. This is I just made this up for confidentiality. But anyway, this is an example how to enter data into this EPI worksheet. So in the table, we can see the natural gas usage is 2.1 million MCF. That is entered in that yellow highlighted area, 2.1 natural gas. You need to check the right unit. If it can be in MCF, it can be in other units. So make sure you are choosing the right unit. Same thing for the kilowatt hour, or it can be in megawatt hour for the electricity usage. That's like 3.7 million. You can see in that first column, first row of this electricity cell. And then, if you have some other fuel usage on site, like distillate oil, residual oil, then coal, or any other thing, you can similarly add those. So that's for the energy usage number. And then there are a few other things to be added here. The first one is total distillate production in proof gallons. And then the byproduct moisture removal. If there is a dryer, it dries the whole distillate. Then and there is an instruction tab where it says how to calculate that. And then the HDD is also, there is a calculator. It's on the instruction tab. All it needs the state and then zip code, and you need to choose the the 12-month period for which you were looking at the HDD. So basically, it takes about a minute or two to get the HDD number. So once we have, or once a facility has all this information, and then this production number by product, moisture removal, and this HDD, it will calculate the energy performance score. So for this one, there is a current plant, and then it can be compared against maybe another plant or from the previous year that shows the difference. So energy performance score for calendar year 2022 here with this example, it shows 77. If the score is over 75, then the facility will be eligible to apply for the certification. So to do that, Danny went through the list of things like what needs to be done, and the most important part is to get it verified by an independent professional engineer. If you can go to the next slide, Christine. And that checklist is also, there is a link, you can download it from that EPA site. And basically the PE needs to verify all these characteristics for the plant, and where the documents are stored, how the total production volumes are calculated, and then most importantly, all the kilowatt hour or MCFs, for every month, it needs to be checked against the invoices and how the records are kept. So here's a list of here is the checklist for the PE to verify, and once it is done, he or she will sign it here, and then on the Excel worksheet there is a place where the PE needs to print that page and then stamp it there, and that's all is needed from a PE. So from the plant people, usually the operations manager or the plant manager should have the data for the total production number, energy usage, and it is very easy to use the EPI worksheet to get the score first. If the score is over 75, then the data needs to be verified by a professional engineer, and that can be done in a day and have all the professional engineer needs to do is to visit the site and then look at the layout of look at the production facility, and then verify against this checklist. So once it is done, then there are other things to apply. As it was stated earlier, that there is an award application letter. Along with that, award specification sheet, this PE checklist, EPI, Excel file, and then the stamped and scanned statement of energy performance. So it's relatively easy to do it. So I encourage the other distilleries to check out this EPI tool and go for the certification.
Thanks, Muneem and Matt and Danny. So I think in a couple minutes here, we'll open it up. But before we do that, I have a few questions for Muneem. So from a company perspective, why should a company spend the time in benchmarking their energy usage to others in the industry?
So, the benchmarking is really important in these days, especially for, the sustainability reason. That's a big reason now. Like, there are sustainability reports. So it is, it can be checked against others. That's number one. We can see where are the gaps. And then also, where are the potentials to make improvements. So suppose if we see the score is not there, but still there is a room, and what is the average, what projects needs to be done to get to that level in the top 25 percentile. And this all will tie with the sustainability initiative for a company. And again, these energy numbers is also very much tied with the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's like, I would say, a win-win case. So if a facility can take care of the energy management well, it will help them to reduce greenhouse gas emission, and it will be all tied to the sustainability initiative and reports that are very hot topics in these days.
And as a follow-on to that, why do you think, so that's the benchmarking piece, but why do you think, what are the most important reasons a company should spend the time and effort to apply for Energy Star certification of their distillery?
EPA Energy Star has a really great brand value. Brand recognition is great. It was shown in one of the slides before. Then definitely it's a good business decision to go for it, as well as it's the source of pride for the employees working at a facility like which is Energy Star, either Energy Star certified, or even moving towards Energy Star certification, as well as it is also verified by an independent there is a third-party verification involved. So I think all these are really great things for a company to go for it.
Great, thank you. So it looks like we have some questions in the Q&A, and I think maybe we'll take those. And then Kim, if you could unmute folks so that if they want to raise their hand and ask a question, they can do so verbally. But let's first start with the questions that are here. I'll start with the first one that I see. And I guess this is for Danny. Approximately how many distilleries are currently Energy Star certified?
So none yet, because we only launched the EPI a few weeks ago. But I have been talking to at least a half a dozen companies who do have distilleries that are eligible. So we hope to be certifying a lot within the coming weeks.
Okay. The next question is the Energy Star rating just for distilleries that are in operation. Could we use Energy Star certification for a distillery that is being built but hasn't yet started production?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Energy Star certification, it's only for distilleries that are in operation, that have been in operation for at least 12 months. Because again, you remember you have to have 12 months worth of data. However, if you are building a distillery, you can use the EPI to see how likely it is the distillery could achieve certification when it's built. So when you design a distillery, you'll have an idea, well, what's its capacity? How many proof gallons is it producing? Is it going to source grain neutral spirits or other spirits? So you could put that in, you could put in your anticipated energy use, and you could see your score. And hopefully you'd be able to design it in a way so that the score will be above 75. So once people actually are distilling, they would be able to get certified. Matt,
Great.
did you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the I think that's a great thing to do. If you're building one, you can put in that information, what you expect it to be, see what it'll get. You can even put in, maybe a worst case scenario. You can use it during the planning. You're like, okay, well, if we add a dry house, what would that do to our energy? What would that do to our score? And use that for hypotheticals while you're building, and kind of see how that would impact your energy use and impact your Energy Star, efficiency score. Different kind of building configurations during that process, and building with energy efficiency in mind in the first place. We highly encourage that. Yeah,
because it's not, you just don't want to use it to get Energy Star certified, you have a score of 75 or higher, it means that your client is going to be saving money on energy during operations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I do, want to say one of a couple things about the tool, and Gail brought this up. You may know which plant is your best plant, but your best plant might only be average when you compare it to the industry as a whole, right? And so this kind of helps give you that insight into what your competitors are doing, what everyone else is doing, and helps highlight that there are some opportunities out there, right? And so we've worked with a lot of different industries, a lot of different companies, and we've had some say, no, this score is impossible. There's no way, this is my best plant, and then we'll get somebody else in the room, one of their competitors in the room, and they're like, well, we're doing that. It is possible. And so then it's kind of back to the drawing board, kind of seeing where those opportunities lie, and you're leaving money on the table in that case.
Mhm.
And one other comment, what's great about this tool is it could give you an idea of what's possible in the industry without you having to share any of your data or without your competitors sharing any data with you. The underlying model is based on actual data, but there's nothing in the EPI that will disclose anything about them. So yeah, if you want to figure out how you rank to others in the industry, but you don't want to ask them directly, they may not tell you the answer, use the EPI and you'll get an idea.
And on that note, a big thank you to everyone, all the companies and people like Muneem who helped in this process, and DISCUS in this. Yeah, this was a very long process, and we had a lot of different iterations of the model that I didn't have time to go into. I think the final draft was maybe the 4th or 5th different version that we worked on and put out, and we just kept refining it as we went, getting more feedback, until we got something, we finalized a model that we're comfortable with and we think is doing a good job. And so if you're out there and you haven't used it before and you're putting in your data and something, you're not sure why you're getting the score you're getting, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to kind of go over it with you and make sure that everything's right, or at the very least explain what the model is doing, and why you're getting the score that you are.
Great. So just as a reminder, if any of the participants on the call have a question, you can either use the Q&A, or I believe now you can unmute yourself and ask your question of any of the panelists directly. Are there any questions?
Yeah, sometimes I do get a question, and please put your questions in the chat. I do get a question, how do you find a professional engineer? Muneem, can you give a little more insight how you found the professional engineer, or advice you have for other distilleries on the call?
Sure. For this particular one, every site usually has some contact information of an environmental consultant who, because for environmental permitting and other things, that consultant would help. And then, either that person is a PE or the colleagues could be a PE. That's how we found one, because that specific group knows about that process well. So we didn't need to bring somebody, a fresh, like another PE who doesn't know about the site. So it made the things easier, like, knowing how the process is, already having some knowledge about the process and other part of the facility. So it helps. That's one way to go. And then the other way to find a professional engineer is from the engineering department. Engineering department for that facility, there are always work for the continuous improvement, and they work with some engineering firm, and usually there are professional engineers with that engineering firm. So this could be I would say, the better route to go for the professional engineer.
Yeah, so it seems like your distillery probably has someone on staff or an affiliation with someone. I would say if for some reason you aren't able to identify a PE, you can always email our program and we may have some other suggestions to share with you.
And it looks like we have another question in the Q&A. Matt, I think this one is for you.
Sure. Yep. So does the model allow for unconventional energy sources such as scrap wood? And the answer is yes. Yep. As long as you know the energy content of the fuel source or of that source, it would just go in the other category on the EPI. And with that, it would need to be in MMBTU. But yeah, wood, whatever you're burning. I mean, we work with cement. Who they burn literal trash. They burn anything they can get their hands on. And yeah, so as long as you know the heat content and can put that into MMBTU, we have a spot for it on there.
Thank you. There any other questions? If not, we'll start to wrap this up. But I would just say, this is again a very exciting. I know it's many years in development. So thanks to EPA, Matt and your colleagues at Duke, all the DISCUS members and other distilleries that helped to work on this important project to get us to this point of having the opportunity for distilleries to apply for ENERGY STAR certification. We're again very excited about this. To be the first within the alcohol industry to have this opportunity, I think is just wonderful. And so if any of you are interested in this, it would really be great to get to let Danny know sooner rather than later, because the opportunity to have sort of a special press release from EPA on this is also a unique opportunity and a great way to highlight the work of this industry towards energy efficiency. Are there any other final questions?
I will add, I know, the main focus of this webinar is on the certification process, but we think that the tool is useful if you're under a 75 as well, just to show you kind of where you are, and you can use it to help, kind of manage improvement. And the reality is, it's designed to be the top 25% can get certified, and so not everyone is going to fall in that 75. And then there are also other ENERGY STAR programs that and recognition opportunities for plants that don't hit that 75 number.
Great, thank you. Well, seeing no final questions here, thanks again to Danny, Matt, and Muneem for the presentation and all the information here. We will make sure that it gets out, and a recording of this will be shared and posted to the DISCUS website. Thanks to all of the participants who joined us today to learn about the ENERGY STAR certification and the EPI and the process to apply for ENERGY STAR certification. We appreciate your time. And with that concludes our recording and the presentation and the webinar. Everyone, please enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next DISCUS webinar. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Christine.